11.6 standard deviation. This will be using our TI calculator, so get one so you'll be ready to roll. All right, let's talk about this. Now, you talked about standard deviation in Algebra 1. Let's review what that is exactly. Standard deviation is a way of measuring how much data, value, or values deviate or are away from the mean. The Greek letter symbol, and this is a funky little zero with a little tail kind of thing, is called lowercase sigma, okay, lowercase sigma, and that represents the standard deviation. So whenever you see this little symbol, that means sigma. All right, and that stands for standard deviation. When you're looking for the standard deviation, you're simply just going to enter your data into your calculator and it will do it for you. You're just going to have to remember how to do it and remember the steps to find the standard deviation. So when you're doing this, you're going to go to Stat on your calculator, and after you put in your data, so you should Stat, Edit, enter your data. Okay, Stat, Edit, enter your data. Once you have your data in, you're going to go over to Calc. So you're going to see at the top, it's going to go over to Calc. All right, and then choose one bar stats, which will be number 1, and then hit enter. Okay, so when you're doing this, we're going to be working with different sets of data. So let's use this example right here. It says, the table displays the number of U.S. hurricane strikes by decade from the years 1851 to 2000. What are the mean and the standard deviation for this data set? Now, when you're looking at your information in your calculator, they use this symbol right here, which is called X bar. That is your mean. Okay, so it will calculate all this for you, but they use X bar. Okay, most of the time you might even see it written like this. This is mu. Okay, and that's your Greek letter for mean. Both of these are mean, but our calculator uses X bar. All right, so you're going to go and type this into your calculator. Remember, when you're doing these, it always lists something over something. It's always X and then Y. Okay, so you'll type in all these X's and then all these Y's, and then you will calculate your mean and your standard deviation. So once you have all these plugged in, then we're going to go over to the next screen. Okay, and then it's going to give you a screen like this. Once you hit one bar stat, this little X bar is your mean, and it's 17.6, okay? So it'll tell you exactly what it is. The sigma X, which is right here under the SX, sigma X is your standard deviation, 3.5, okay? So the standard deviation on this particular set of data is 3.5 and 17.6 is your mean. So to determine the deviations, what you'll do, and we're talking about on a bell curve, which we'll talk about in the next set of notes, bell curve. Oh, whoops, let's draw this straight. Impossible. This middle curve, middle line right here is going to be just getting worse and worse. This middle line is going to be your mean. Now, standard deviation is how much something is away from that mean. You will have, I can't draw straight to save my soul. You will have 3 lines to the right and 3 lines to the left. And each one of these lines will represent a standard deviation. Okay? So when you're finding these standard deviations, you're going to use the mean, and you're going to either add or subtract. So for the ones on the right, you're going to take your mean and add a standard deviation. So that would be, in this case, 17.6 plus 3.5, which will give you 21.1. That will be right here, 21.1. That's one standard deviation. All right, then from there you add another 3.5 to that number, 21.1, so that'll give you 24.6. That's 2 standard deviations to the right. Now, you'll do the same thing with the left, except for you're going to subtract it. So you'll take 17.6, which is our mean. Should put that in here. And subtract 3.5, and that'll give you 14.1. Okay, and then if you subtract from that 3.5, you will get 10.6. And to do the third deviation, you'll do the same thing. Okay? All right, so that's going to be standard deviations to the right and to the left. Okay? Now, if something was within one standard deviation, that could be on either side. Okay? Within one standard deviation, that could be any information in here. All right, that's not two standard deviations, that's within one. When they talk about within one standard deviation, that's to the right and left. If they talk about two standard deviations, that's two to the right and two to the left, okay? Not four, but two. All right, so we're going to take this information now that we've just got, these numbers, and we're going to plot a line graph and look at the data, and we're going to talk about the standard deviations. So go over. We've got it all plotted out. We took all of our data, okay, and we put them, we did a line graph by twos. We put in our 17.6 is our mean, and then we put each one of the data that was in our table, and we put them and marked them in our line graph, okay? And from here, we went one standard deviation to the right, and mark that, one more to the right, and mark that. Same with the left, mark that, and mark that. Now, what they'll ask you is about the data and how it falls between the standard deviations, okay? In this particular problem, all of the data fell within two standard deviations of the mean. So that means the hurricane watchers could expect that the number of U.S. hurricane strikes in a decade will probably fall within two standard deviations of that 15-decade mean, okay? So that's how they interpret it. So that's what you're going to be doing, using either a line graph, or most of them will be using the bell curves, which we'll be talking about in the next video, okay? So we will be working with bell curves a lot and talking about percentages and things like that, and standard deviations with those. Okay, so this just gives you a brief review of standard deviation that you've already done in Algebra 1, and we will see you in class. If you have any questions, come see me.